So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the this webinar this morning, brought to you by CDW and Cisco Meraki. My name is Matthew Slorick, and I'm the Managing Director for CDW in the Middle East and Africa. Delighted this morning to be joined again by our friends from Cisco Meraki, Jack Meads, joining us to talk through Cisco Meraki's strategy and, more importantly, take part in a live Q&A stroke live demo with our senior technical consultant, George Villieuren. Hopefully it'll give you a slightly different format from some of the other webinars that we've been doing recently. Hopefully you get some value from it, learn a bit more about this particular product, the Z3, which we believe is an excellent product when rolling out secure remote workers. There will be Q&A. There is a Q&A board on the right-hand side of your window. Hopefully you can see that. So feel free to type messages along the way, and also we'll cover questions as we come to the end of the structured presentations. I'm going to kick off by just giving you a 4-slide overview of CDW for those who may not have seen this before. Apologies to those who have. It's literally a 4-slide, 5-minute overview of CDW. We are a US-based organization headquartered in Vernon Hills in Illinois, just outside Chicago. We operate most continents in the world. We consider ourselves to be a worldwide technology partner, systems integrator, with offices obviously in the US and Canada and North America, the UK, Holland and Ireland in Europe, here in the Middle East in Dubai, and more recently in India and South Africa, covering this part of the world, and then into the Far East in Hong Kong, Singapore and Australia. 2 main territories that we don't cover today, with feet on the ground, that is Russia and South America, but they are potentials for the future. Our $18 billion revenues as of last year, the majority of that is from North American sales. In excess of $15 billion takes place in North America, of which $6 billion is with the US and Canadian federal governments. But outside of the US, we're a $3 billion organization in our own right. And as you can see, our emerging markets, which is particularly in the Middle East and Asia Pac areas, are seeing very strong growth. Co-worker balance is something that we continue to invest in. We have a target of trying to make sure that we have over 50% of our co-workers in service delivery, consultancy and engineering roles. So those are basically customer-facing technology roles. That's a very important ratio for us to be able to deliver the quality of service and the breadth of service that we want to do to our customers. Here in the UAE, we established the office in 2007. We have a local 24/7 services organization with local service desk, and we have on hand 35 technical consultants to help architect and implement technology solutions. So what do we mean by being an IT partner, an IT solutions provider? Well, essentially, we're looking to scale both horizontally from an industry vertical perspective, so across many industry verticals. You can see in some of the graphics there that we cover everything from medical, oil and gas, into regular commerce, but we're also trying to cover a very broad spectrum of technology infrastructure. So we talk about end-to-end capabilities of being able to deliver everything from the device back into the data center, or indeed hybrid cloud, and then everything horizontally from a network connectivity and security aspect. So we are an infrastructure company from front to back and side to side. So in terms of the sort of area of technology that we're talking about today, CDW are very focused on making sure that we work with what we consider to be some of the best, if not the best, partners in the industry for particular product silos. So of course we were delighted to be joined today by our friends from Cisco Meraki. We work with them in a number of areas when it comes to delivering either cloud-based or data center-based solutions and applications for end user consumption. As you'd expect in the client arena, we work with all of the leading brands, and we make sure that our ability to source those products is second to none. So customers, particularly in this region in the Middle East, can benefit from our supply chains in both the US and Europe. We all know there's no magic IT factory here in the Middle East, and so we make sure that we can access product on a regular basis. And we publish to our customers a regular stock list, and we tend to see stock levels, in excess of $10 million on any one day of client devices. In the collaboration space, as you'd expect, we work with all of the leading brands. At the moment, you can imagine we're extremely busy talking to customers about how they can leverage Cisco's WebEx product, and of course, leveraging Microsoft Teams, as we are today, to enable customers to continue to communicate effectively. Also in this space, we're also focusing on how people can extend their voice operations, and I think that's particularly important when we come on and look at this Meraki Z3. And in this space, we do work both with obviously Cisco and Poly. From a networking VPN connectivity perspective, again, as you'd expect, Meraki is probably our preferred partner in this space, with other siloed products such as Barracudas and Fortinet. And then obviously in the cloud space and in SD-WAN delivery, we're starting to see customers becoming very interested in things like VMware's Velo Cloud, ForcePoint, and Citrix NetScaler business. So how does CDW fit in with these vendors and take them to market and engage with our customers? Well, quite simply, we want to be able to be a trusted advisor to our customers along their adoption life cycle. So in the first instance, we would like to work with our customers, put our excellent consultants in front of them, operate as an advisor in an advisory capacity, understand requirements, start to look at workshops, start to look at POCs, and then move into the assessment phase of actually shortlisting product and solutions, and designing how those pilot projects might work, and what are the items that we need to identify success. In the following the purchase cycle, we have professional services that we look to deliver implementation, and we're very keen to make sure that you get both the support from the vendor and from CDW to ensure that implementation and integration goes smoothly. Adoption is an area where we spend a lot of time these days, where customers quite often, and I think this is something that goes back a number of years, certainly my 20 years in this business, where do people actually get the ROI? Do they get the delivery? Do they get the improved performance that they're looking for from a technology solution? Has always been a big question for the business. So adoption is key. It's where we work with the customer to make sure that all of the benefits and all of the ideas that went into designing a solution do get delivered to the business. And it's becoming more and more part of our work, working with customers to understand how they can fully adopt all of the benefits and features that they've purchased. And then moving into the operate phase, CDW's pedigree and background comes from operating managed and outsourced services in traditional data centers and desk side and desktop services. And moving forward, our goal is to be your managed service partner, both on-premise and in the cloud, and in multi-cloud as well. So you'll see a lot from us around packaged services that will hopefully help you understand how you can maximize our services to deliver operational efficiency across a hybrid technology infrastructure. That's it from me. It was, as I said, a very short intro. Hopefully you understand a bit about CDW now. I'm happy to take any questions offline or via email. I'm going to hand over to Jack and George, and they're going to talk to you about a particular product set within the Meraki range.
Okay, fantastic. So Today we want to talk about the Z3. Before we do that, let me just introduce myself. My name is Jack Meads. I am the UAE Small Business Meraki Account Manager. I'm super excited to talk to you about what we have in store today. Before we do that, I just want to outline a very quick agenda for you all. So we won't take too long to talk about what the Z3 is, but we want to essentially look at what the Z3 is, what it looks like, and the capabilities that it enables us to be able to do. Once we've talked about it, we're going to show you it over a live demo, and then we're going to take a little bit of time at the end to talk about some of the current promotions that we've got running here at Meraki. And whatever questions we don't manage to answer on today's call, I assume we'll do it the same way we did it last time. We will store up those questions on an email and then respond to everyone. So it's all in one place. So moving on, what is the Meraki Z3? Well, essentially, the Z3 is Cisco Meraki's wireless security appliance designed for telecommuting employees and IT staff. Now, at the time, if I'm going to be honest with you, I think the guys that created the Z3 didn't really create it in a way for it to be built purposely for a situation in which we're in today, where we have a global wide kind of pandemic that is sending everybody to be home, and we need enterprise grade networking equipment enabled to have access to all the applications we need and to do all of the business functionalities that we do on a day-to-day basis. The Z3 wasn't really designed for that, but in fact, it makes the perfect device for that scenario anyway. And to give you a little bit more context, for those of you that were on the call with me last week, you may recognize this slide. And I do want to say a big thanks for the people that have joined us again today and for those new joiners. But here's a nice diagram that really illustrates what the Z3 is and where does it go. So on the left-hand side, you'll see your headquarters. Now your headquarters is normally backed up by some form of concentrator. Obviously, I would recommend that being a Meraki MX device. But the good news is it doesn't have to be a Meraki firewall in your headquarters. The functionalities that we're going to cover today work whether or not you've got Meraki firewalls or whether or not you've got a different vendor there as well. So on the left-hand side, you see your headquarters. We're not really going to touch on that too much today. We're more interested in looking at what does your remote worker look like. Now on the diagram on the right-hand side, you can see that we've connected our remote worker with the Z3. And in turn, he's got access to all of his business applications that he needs to be able to operate his usual day-to-day. So moving forward, and we actually look at what the Z3 looks like, we've got two options. We've got the Z3 and the Z3C. C stands for cellular. So the cellular failover capability is actually integrated into the device itself with the Z3C. To enable that functionality on the Z3, it can be done. You just need to plug in essentially what looks like a dongle, and you would get that cellular failover capabilities. But to name some other key features, as with all of the Cisco Meraki products, they're remotely managed and configured. We're going to show you that in just a moment. I just mentioned, but I'll go over it again. We've got that automatic WAN failover to cellular uplink. So you've got a WAN uplink and you've got a cellular uplink. You can prioritize traffic over either of those uplinks. And equally, you know, if one of those uplinks does fail, then we've got that automatic failover with the redundant uplink. Auto VPN self-configuring site-to-site VPN. We're actually going to show you this as well, so no need to dive into it into more detail right now. You've got customer shaping traffic options to optimize your VPN traffic. So again, if we look at the WAN uplink and the cellular uplink, perhaps I want to prioritize some business critical information or some business critical traffic over one of those uplinks. And I want to use the other uplink, maybe the cellular or the WAN connection for my less critical traffic that's required. So we've got the option of doing that. And that's really the differentiator here in the Z3. It's a lot more than just your VPN connection. It's got a lot more intelligence built into the device, actually. Some of the physical elements of it. So it's got 4 wired ports with 1 PoE powered port, which we professionally recommend that you plug in your IP phone to that PoE powered port. That's kind of what it was designed for. So I want you to imagine now you've got your at-home worker, your teleworker, your remote worker, however you would refer to them. They've got a Z3 in their house. They can plug in their IP phone to that Z3, and they've got no worries at all from a security perspective about connecting back to the corporate office and having access to those things that he so desperately needs. Each Z3 can support up to 4 SSIDs. We got layer 7 application visibility and traffic shaping control as well, which is pretty fun, and we'll show you that on the dashboard in just a moment. So there's actually 2 ways, and I want to just float back to this photo here. So we're going to really focus on the Z3 today. It doesn't have to be a Z3, you know, as long as we've got that big concentrator in the headquarters, we can achieve the same thing here with a Z3 or a really low powered MX. I wanted to just shed some light on that before I show you this slide. What are some of the differences between the Z3 and the MX? You'll see there are more similarities than differences on this slide. The points that I really want to allude you to are the throughput differences. So obviously the Z3 is slightly less powerful because it was designed to be for teleworkers, you know, and just to support kind of one business person at a time, whereas the MX, you've got up to 250 Mbps. And the key capabilities that you don't get on the Z3 that you would on the MX would be SD-WAN capabilities, because you've got 2 WAN uplinks, not 1. Unified threat management and content filtering. That being said, there are obviously still a lot of security features to the Z3, and we'll do our best to go through some of those today. Now, that brings us in to the live demo. Again, it would just be great if I could get some confirmation from the panelists that you can all see my screen.
Yeah, we can see that.
Fantastic. Okay, so I want you to imagine now you've placed your order for the Z3, or the Z3 is on its way to you. Now, what we're going to run you through today is how do we configure that device, and essentially what are the steps that you need to follow the day that this arrives. Now, you don't actually have to do it the day that it arrives. You can actually pre-configure this. So when you place an order with Meraki, we give you all of the serial numbers and the order number. You can essentially log on to the dashboard, and what we're looking at now, by the way, is the dashboard. So you'll see my login credentials are up on the top right hand side of the screen. You would log into your own credentials and you'll be able to configure and pre-configure your entire network before it even turns up. But again, let me come back to the Z3. So here we are, our teleworker gateway. That is the name of the Z3 on the dashboard. And I've come into the general configuration piece here. And essentially what we're doing today is we're giving it a name. Okay, so I want to give a name to this Z3 device. I want to give it a time zone, and I want to give it a location. Now, this name is important because it's the way in which I'm going to recognize the Z3, and it's the way in which the network's going to recognize me as a Z3 as well. So that is basically, we're giving the Z3 some identification now. Now, for any of those on the call that were with us last week, you would have seen me cover the configuration templates piece. If you've already pre-configured a template, it's super easy. You can push out your pre-configured templates to all your new devices. So everything I'm going to show you in the next 5 to 10 minutes can be done literally at a click of a button, as long as that template is pre-configured. The last key piece here is we're going to name our network admins. So just to be clear, the network admins here are the people that you want to access the network from a IT troubleshooting point of view. So these are the guys that when something goes wrong with one of your home workers, they're going to jump into the dashboard and try and understand what it is. If they need to apply some policies and do some configurations and play around with configuration templates, you name it, these are your IT admins, and you're going to want to list those guys down here so that they have full access. All right. Now moving forward, there's not much to show you in the wireless settings. I just want to touch on it to play on the fact that we do operate in 2 different channel settings. So 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. I know that that's not always the case with all the vendors on the market. So I just wanted to very quickly showcase that to all of you on the call today. Coming into the DHCP, so if we look at what are our DHCP exceptions, well, first of all, I can choose the way in which my client is going to address either the DHCP server or if we're going to direct it to a different server itself. And you'll notice that if I run a DHCP server here, I can play with things like the lease time. Pretty important point here is I can redirect my IP traffic to specific DNS servers, anything from the public Google DNS server to you can proxy your own upstream DNS, but obviously my professional recommendation would be directing it to Cisco Umbrella's DNS server. That is available with all of the advanced licensing options. And another piece that I wanted to show you here is we've got the option to reserve specific IP ranges and fixed IP assignments as well. So fixed IP assignments would be things like your IP phone or your printer, fixed devices that aren't going anywhere. So we don't want them to float between different IP addresses. We don't want them to be going rogue in any way, shape or form. So we're actually going to give them a fixed IP assignment there. If you did want to relay your DHCP to another server, super easy to do. We click that option and we identify the IP names there, and we click Save Changes. All right, it's really that simple. So for those of you on the call that are new to Meraki, hello and welcome. I hope you're now seeing how easy it is to manage your network. Okay, brilliant. So from a security point of view, we're going to jump into the firewall. Now, I must say, guys, and I didn't highlight this earlier, we're actually looking at a live demo. So this is actually somebody who works for Meraki's Z3 who is working from home now, and they have pre-configured this already. That means I'm not the network admin, and I cannot change and create layer 3 rules on this specific Z3. However, if I was the network admin and this was a brand new Z3, essentially, it would bring us to a page that looks something like this. Now, I've actually jumped back into the London office and I'm looking from our headquarters now, so it's going to be slightly different, but I'm only going to show you the things in which we can do on the Z3 from this page. So the first thing I want you to realize is we've got inbound rules and outbound rules, as well as cellular failover rules. This is so easy to do. I mean, we can just literally add rules. You can add as many as you want. Allow and deny from the toggle down bars. We choose the protocol, we choose the source, the destination, and away you go. And you can change the priority of these rules by simply just putting your mouse over these arrows, clicking down and dragging these up or down. So that's super easy to do. And then that's specifically looking at the layer 3. If we look at the layer 7 rules, you know, perhaps you wanted to block a certain application from being used inside your network. A nice and easy one to always showcase here is video. And we scroll down to Netflix, and as simple as that, now Netflix is blocked on my entire network. Now notice how I said entire network. I can block Netflix either organizational wide. I can block it on specific devices, so maybe specific access points. I don't want Netflix going over those access points, and I can even block per client. So if there is one specific individual who'd been using too much of this application, I can go into his profile and block all access to that application. Another thing I want you to notice here is if we look underneath the drop down box here, I can also block specific traffic from specific ports. And for example, I can go port 23, and now on my port 23, no traffic's going to be coming over that port. I can block traffic from a specific IP range, and I can name and number that IP range there. And then lastly, we can block specific traffic coming from specific countries. And it will give you a nice drop down list there for those countries that we might want to block some traffic from. Depends on your level of security that you're trying to implement, but we've got all the options there from granular to wide scale. Okay. And then the last piece to really show you here would be the traffic shaping. And again, unfortunately, I've got to be honest, guys, this Z3 is already pre-configured. I can't play around too much with it. I can show you on the other screen though. So just to show you what the uplink configurations look like I mentioned before, we've got one WAN link and we've got a cellular failover link as well. And I can specify my minimum and maximum. When these figures drop below or above my minimum and maximum, I can configure it in a way in which it will send me a notification that my network has exceeded my minimum and maximum requirements, and then it's going to give me a notification and I can tend to that and fix it straight away. As I said, that's already pre-configured. So if we look at the SD-WAN and traffic shaping from the headquarters, then essentially you're going to get this kind of look on your Z3 before it's configured. The only difference is, like I said, we don't have that second WAN link connection on the Z3. But you can super easily play around with the Mbps limitations that you want to set on these uplinks. Uplink statistics should be pretty straightforward there. And here's where it gets pretty special. So here's where we can actually enable our active auto VPN, which is essentially, as it says on the box, right? It creates VPN tunnels over all the available uplinks, both primary and secondary. Our primary and secondary links in the Z3 would be WAN link number 1 and cellular failover. And then we've got flow preferences. So I mentioned that you can prioritize specific traffic from applications over specific uplinks. So let me try and walk you through an example here. Let me say that you as a business use Salesforce every single day. It is your most critical application. It's got things on there like your forecasting numbers for the public. It's got things on there like customer details and credentials. Basically, it's got information on there that you definitely don't want anybody else to see. So we can specifically direct that traffic over, for example, our WAN 1 uplink, and we can direct all the rest of our traffic over the second uplink, which in the Z3 example would be the cellular uplink. And obviously, if you did want to do it with the MX, you'd choose WAN number 2. So that's a really creative way and very important way in which we can direct the preference of traffic depending on how business critical that information is. Now, I mentioned earlier through one of the diagrams that I alluded to that to set up the Z3, you don't necessarily need a Meraki firewall back in the headquarters. You could do it with a third-party firewall. And I told you I was going to show you how to do that. So we go into our headquarters. We go site-to-site VPN. And notice here we've got a couple of options, and I'm not going to focus too much time on today, but we can change the sites from spokes and hubs, and we can add different hubs. And here we can name the different hubs and all of the different local networks that we want to be a part of that VPN. But I told you I was going to show you how do we enable third-party firewalls to be a part of my Z3 setup. Essentially, you'd come down to the bottom here to the organization-wide settings, and where you see non-Meraki VPN peers, if I was the network admin, which hopefully you guys one day will be, you will have the option here. There will be a button here to say add non-Meraki VPN peers. You then follow the steps that are required. And by the way, we have a website called documentation.meraki.com, and I've already opened it up for you here. It will literally hold your hand and take you step by step of the way through on how to configure that non-Meraki firewall to be a part of the Z3 setup. So I wanted to allude to that. We have this website called documentation.meraki.com. It's fantastic, guys. You know, it will really give you a lot of the information that you might be looking for. That is if you can't get hold of either me or the fabulous team over at CDW, who I'm sure can help answer those questions as well. Now, I'm coming towards the end of my demo. I want to give a chance to either any of the panelists on the call today, if they have any questions for me, or if any of the attendees today If they have any questions for me, I'll ask one of the panelists to help redirect those questions towards me. And if not, then I can close up here and just finish on some of the promotions that I wanted to cover with you all today. So again, I'm really talking to a mixed bag of people here on the call in terms of how familiar you are with the Meraki portfolio or not. I'm sure some of you, this is recap and refresh kind of stuff. And for others, I hope this is all brand new information for you. So Meraki's portfolio, very quickly, we've got anything from access points to switches to MX/Z3 devices, cellular gateways, MI, which is Meraki Insight for Insight application and WAN performance, Systems Manager, and MVs, which are our smart cameras. That's our entire portfolio, guys. I want you to be aware that we're offering 14-day free trials on all of this equipment. There is a maximum limit, so you can't go to town and get like 1,000 access points as a free trial, but we'll definitely help you out with some form of trials there. And I want you to be aware that that's available for every single one of you. I would just encourage you to reach out to either myself or the guys at CDW to set that up. I know someone's just come off mute. If you just give me 1 second, the last promotion I want to cover here is the first year on us. So the way Meraki works, it's licensing. So you buy the hardware and you buy a license that you attach to it. If you place an order anytime between now and the end of July, we'll essentially give you a free year of licensing on top of that order.
Thanks very much, Jack.
No problem.
I've got a couple of questions from the floor that I'll pass over to you. First question was, can I run a CCTV camera from the PoE port of the Z3?
It really depends how. It's a great question, by the way. It really depends how much traffic is coming in and out of that camera. We've seen cameras that have an incredible amount of traffic coming in and out of them, depending on kind of where they're stored. The answer to your question is it is possible. It's not recommended because we would normally, as suggested earlier, that PoE port's really for that IP phone. But to answer your question, it is possible. I just wouldn't know personally what kind of experience you're going to get. I do have an idea though for that person who asked that question. Is I'm happy to run a free trial for you. We'll send the equipment out and we can test that together, and it'll kind of be an experiment for the both of us. I'm more than happy to offer that service.
Excellent, thank you. We'll circle back around on that one. Abdul has asked, I think you covered it at a very high level. How does the Z3 differ from the MX firewall, he asks?
Yeah, okay. So the MX comes in a variety of different models, starting from the lowest, which would be the MX64, and going all the way up to, I think the biggest one we have is MX425. And why we have these different models is the MXs, depending on the size, change the amount of clients that can connect into that office, and essentially the amount of clients that can help secure using those MX devices. Now we have anything from a small MX that we would put in your house to a large concentrator that we'd put in the headquarters. Whereas the Z3 really doesn't come in many different shapes or sizes. You literally have the Z3 usual option and then the cellular option as well. And it is really designed for those workers that are on the move or those remote workers who just need to quickly spin up a network and dial into their corporate head office. Now, other than that, some of the key points that I touched on earlier are you've got 4 LAN ports in your Z3s, and in your MX you actually only have 3. But essentially you make up for that because you get 2 WAN ports instead of 1. So you'll see they're very similar in some ways, but there are some key differences, i.e. the number of ports or the amount of throughput that can be enabled through that device. I hope that answered your question.
Excellent. Questions coming in thick and fast now. Can the device run over DC power for vehicle usage, for example?
That is a great question. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I don't have the answer for that. I don't know if George has anything he wants to throw in here, if he is on the call. But what I will do, if George isn't on the call, is I'll take a note of that and I'll get back to you within the next hour or so.
So
Great,
I don't know, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, George,
yes, we can hear you, George. Yeah.
Yeah, so for DC power for a vehicle, if you have the appropriate converter from AC to DC, yes, it would be possible, but it won't be proprietary from Meraki. You would need a third-party solution to drop in the middle to run it over DC. In theory, it should be possible. The Z3 is very low power consumption, as is, but you would need a converter adapter to have it run in a vehicle.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, George.
Again, maybe something that we could help that particular customer trial. Sounds like everybody's got some very different uses for this device. So yeah, happy to help where we can. No more questions at the moment. So thank you very much, Jack, for a great presentation as always.
Thanks for having me, guys. I just want to quickly allow, just in case, George, was there anything else that perhaps I missed that you wanted to add for the people on the call before we essentially wrap up here? Because I know it's more me talking than you here, George, but I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add from your side.
So the only thing I would want to add from my side is to say that for the remote connectivity, it's not only the Z3 and the MX. We can also do, you can have some limited VPN functionality just with the Meraki access points. So for those of you who have an existing Meraki network deployment, you can just extend your network by moving an access point into someone's house if they only need Wi-Fi, for instance. And there's many ways that we at CDW can create a solution for you that is per user specific, where the Z3 would be for your teleworker, for maybe a call center agent, for someone who needs their desk phone, where that is a big necessity. The MXs would be for people who, maybe only have a PC and they only need to be connected, and that would be fine. And then for Wi-Fi only users, we could achieve this with an MR access point also. And I think that was it. I think you covered everything else in great detail. Thank you very much.
Thanks, George. A couple more questions coming in just before we close up. Ismail is asking, so will a Z3 support IPsec between different firewalls like Palo Alto, Fortinet, etc.? If yes, does it need a public IP endpoint on the other end? And would it work with full IPsec functionality?
Yeah, great question. I know we've got connectivity and essentially authentication between the different firewalls on the market, so we're not agnostic with which firewalls we can work with. We work with all the vendors out there. And in terms of IPsec between those firewalls, that question's better directed towards my engineering team. And again, I do apologize, but I'm going to have to get back to you on that within the next hour or so. The connectivity testing between our Z3s and other firewalls, as I'm sure you could imagine, isn't something that I'm used to experiencing, because so much with our corporate demos, it's always Meraki to Meraki devices. But I will get you an answer in the next hour or so. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, that was actually another follow-up question, which I think is a very similar one, which is, I assume that it works with any firewall brand, any limitations. So the answer is, at the moment, probably not, but we can't give you a warranty for every single brand out there. Again, something that we're happy to try.
The reason why that works, Matthew, is because of our open APIs, right? So we have built our devices in a way in which we know customers aren't going to necessarily have full Meraki networks. So we build our devices in a way which they do integrate with all of the other vendors out there. I'm sure there are some vendors who have closed off their APIs in which we can't integrate with them, but we're built in such a way with our open APIs in which we can integrate with most of those vendors out there.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Sure.
How scalable is the device? Is another question from Abdul. Is it easy to scale?
Yeah, it's super easy to scale, and you know, one of those key points about scalability that we really quickly touched on earlier was about those configuration templates. If you have those configuration templates built for your different workers, so you could have a configuration template for teleworker, for marketing, for sales, for finance, and then any new device that comes in that you want to be grouped with those people, you can push out those configuration templates. So that helps us massively when it comes to scalability, because essentially you can onboard new devices. You can onboard 2 or 3 devices at a time, or 2,000 or 3,000 devices at a time. So to answer your question, yes, very scalable.
Thank you. Ahmed asks, does it have dynamic DNS capability?
Yes, it does. I think we touched on the demo how we can point
cover that, yeah.
Traffic to the different DNS servers. If it wasn't clear enough, then I'm also happy to write up a short piece on the follow-up email to help with that.
Okay, cool. I think no questions for the moment. Just I'll give it another couple of minutes or so. Whilst we're waiting for any more questions, also in addition to Meraki's great offer of 14-day free trials, we are actually giving away a Z3 today, with also CDW's assistance in setting it up. That will be based just on a name out the hat. After the end of this, after we've seen everybody who's logged on, and we'll publish that in an email to the lucky winner in the next working 24 to 48 hours. So thanks for joining, and hopefully you'll be the lucky winner. I think we're going to bring it to an end now. Our hour is nearly up. We can give you back 10 minutes. I'd like to thank Jack and George very much indeed for the presentation, and for everybody who's joined. Feel free to email us back. Rad is your main point of contact, but we'll pass you this presentation and the email of all the speakers, and feel free to contact us with any questions you might have. That's it. Stay safe, have a great weekend, and I hope your families are all well.
Thanks so much, guys. All the best.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time.